The Battle of Stirling Bridge.
Oh my God. Is it
Well,
though? Is
what's
it?
that?
Is it though? Is
Where's
it the
the
battle
bridge,
of
guys?
Stirling?
Where's the bridge? I can't find the bridge, guys.
Oh my God. Why is it so bad? Ah.
Yeah,
So I put a second short out talking about how why I think most medieval movies suck and why I just can't watch them.
yeah,
And
yeah.
most people agree, but there's this certain subset of the population that is really triggered by it, right? There's it's something about me suggesting that movies they love are less than perfect. And
Yeah.
it really makes people double down about, oh, but the stinky and filthy part is the accurate part of the movie. Everyone knows everyone in the Middle Ages was just filthy, dirty, and smelled like pigs.
Mm.
And we really doubled. There's one guy who said, someone asked him, where on earth did you hear that about the Middle Ages? And he said, well, I paid attention in history class. And I'm like, oh, history class? You
Mm.
think your history classes gave you an accurate depiction of the Middle Ages? They most likely did not. That
No,
is,
they didn't. Hey, Kate, how are you
I,
keeping?
I, I don't know about you, but the average like middle school or high school history class, if they talk about the Middle Ages, they
Mm.
present every horrible misconception and myth as though it were reality, right? And
Mm.
they double down on it because most history teachers aren't historians. They're
Yes.
not
Yeah.
they're not historians and they're expected to teach, every bit of history from Mesopotamia up through to the Vietnam War and to somehow
Mm.
be experts in everything about all of those eras. There's no way that's possible.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little frustrating. I basically have this standard response now on my clipboard on my phone, where I just
Mm.
post it in and respond that basically says, it's a lie that people were dirty and stinky in the Middle Ages. We know this because one, there were public bathhouses everywhere until about 1520. Two, because of the health manuals that talk about how to stay clean and why you need to stay clean. Three, the expense accounts that talk about soap purchases.
Mm.
Four, etiquette manuals that tell you how to bathe properly. It's like I don't know how much more evidence I need to provide you with, but uh
Oh, it's absolutely wild. The thing is, as well, is as you hit the nail on the head there, the secondary school education, as we call it in Ireland, is absolutely lacking. Like going through the system myself, I soon realised why teachers know so little, and that's down to the fact that they literally tick the boxes and then they're just sent off. They're
yeah.
sent off before they get into the meat of an education. Like they don't have masters, they don't have PhDs, they don't have a meat or full education. They're just tick the boxes and then off you go into the wild to go teach everyone else how to tick the boxes.
Oh, American teachers, those horribly paid American public school teachers are expected to have master's degrees, by the way.
Oh,
Most of them
really?
do. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Most of them do. But in American schools, the problem is that ever since, No Child Left Behind back in the Bush 2 era,
Mm.
teachers have basically been forced to just teach for standardized testing, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because federal funds are allotted based on how well the students do perform on these tests. So
Mm.
it stopped being about knowledge for the sake of knowledge and started being about, well, can you pass the standardized test? And
Mm.
that's all that matters.
Yeah.
So, I don't blame. It's the system that's wretched. And the
Mm.
fact that teachers in the United States are paid garbage. I mean,
Yeah.
you could earn more as a landscaper, not a designer. I mean, someone mowing lawns. You could earn more mowing lawns than you can as a public school teacher in the United
Oh, yeah.
States. That's how little we value education.
Oh, 100%. Like, yeah. It's complete garbage these days for sure.
Yeah.
How's everybody this morning? How y'all keeping? Welcome to our little rant, which
A little rant.
I think it's going to be 2 hours of it, but it is what it is. I personally, I do love the movie Braveheart, but there is since I was 5 years of age, fully aware that there are thousands of historical inaccuracies in this one. And yeah, it's definitely something that needs to be highlighted for sure. Last time we finished up, we were just covering the topic that is the Battle of Stirling Bridge, which is a very, very good, a very good example of historical inaccuracy. In fact, as the title gives away, the Battle of Stirling Bridge, it has no bridge. You know, the Battle of Stirling Bridge has no bridge. Like it's referred to as the Battle of Stirling Bridge, has no
Oh my
bridge
God.
whatsoever. You know,
Well,
which is just absolutely mental. Like,
that's not a bridge either. That's a flag.
mm. Well, just to highlight what we're talking about today. Um, yeah, the Battle of Stirling Bridge. It's a funny one. If you watch the movie itself, Rachel and Philip, which is your favorite period in history? Late night for me. I'm assuming Rachel, your favorite period is the 15th century.
I mean, it's, so it depends. I don't even know if I'd say I have a favorite period. So
Mm,
the reason I picked the 15th century is because it is the earliest period, and this is true,
mm,
for which we have documentable dances.
mm. Oh,
There is no, we have zero descriptions or choreographies or instructions of social dancing in Europe before the 15th century.
mm,
I actually started in the 12th century because, the 12th century is the era of the troubadours. It's the era of courtly love. It's, on the one hand, it's the era of the Crusades, but it's also this big, massive push for intercultural exchange in Europe.
mm,
And the fashions
mm,
are just stunning. These bliots for men and women are just sexy and so stylish. But then I learned
mm.
we know nothing about dance and very little about music in the 12th century. So,
Yeah.
those being two big components for me in reenactment and living history and social life in general, I therefore fast forwarded to the earliest era for
Mm,
which we have reliably documentable dances, and that's the 15th century. Happily, I've always had a love for the Gothic, the late Goth, what we would call the Gothic
mm.
aesthetic, the late Gothic aesthetic,
Yeah.
specifically that Flemish, Burgundian, French look, with the tall hats and the gorgeous bed hangings. All those Flemish paintings were very formative for me. So it was okay for me. It was okay. And then, of course,
Mm,
Italian styles in the 15th century are also really elegant. But
mm,
if we actually knew something about 12th century, I mean, really something, not just words, but actually knew what they looked like and sounded like, 12th century
mm.
music and dance, I'd probably still be back in the 12th century.
Yeah, the 12th century is good. My personal two favorite eras is probably the 10th century and the I do love the 15th century as well. I like the what was it, the 10th century, the kind of economic golden age that's in Ireland at the time. And I love, from what people are dressing like. I like the clothing of that era. It's some of my favorite clothing, especially the high burnout Scandinavian clothing. Ireland at the time, and I'm not talking about like the fantasy version of 10th century Ireland, which is Irish versus Vikings. I'm talking about the real, actual 10th century Ireland under the High King of Ireland at the time, the re-roke of the Nail Confederation, which was Donegal Dunn, and his control over Dublin at the time, where Dublin was giving him tribute. And at the same time, Dublin was very active in areas like York, fighting away against the Anglo Saxons and the Norwegians over the control of the trade port of York at the time, which they were referring to as Jorvik. And also, what I find most exciting of all is the humongous trade route, which was at the time starting to peak over in Iceland and go all the way over to places such as Constantinople, over to Baghdad, then from Baghdad over to the Silk Road into China and places like Japan and stuff. I find it a very, very exciting era. And then I also love the 15th century Ireland as well, especially with the Gaelic resurgence in Ireland. It's definitely a period that is you kind of get all the best of the medieval world inside of Ireland. Ireland at the time is building a whole load of tower houses, and you kind of get this peak of what they refer to as bastard feudalism in Ireland, where you have cattle raiding, you have assemblies that are happening in tower houses, and you also have city life as well of Cork, Dublin, Waterford, Limerick. So I definitely would go for the 15th century as well. I think they're my two favorite eras as a whole. But I do love certain areas like the 13th and 14th century as well. So there is other areas as well that I absolutely love, like the 6th century as well, another era that I absolutely love as well. So yeah.
Yeah, it's
I didn't expand too much, did I?
no, I don't think so. There were some good comments though. Uh,
Mm.
was Braveheart super inaccurate? Yes. Not
Yeah.
not only is the medieval material culture that's depicted for all of the different cultures inaccurate as hell. The history
Mm.
itself is not history practically.
Yeah.
It's even the history is mostly fantasy. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's super inaccurate on every level. If they had called the movie, okay, if the movie had been called Braveheart and it had been set in a country called Fortland, uh,
Yeah.
and fighting against Dengland, then it would be
Mm.
just a fantasy movie, and it would be fine because it's a fantasy movie.
Mm.
But it's not a
Yeah.
fantasy
Yeah.
movie. It's presented as history, and it's just not on any level. Is it
Mm. Mm.
history?
I personally still love it though.
Yeah, I mean, it's you can still love it, but you just can't love it as a history movie because it's not.
Yeah,
It's not that at
it's
all. And
true. Well,
what's really scary is that in the United States, for certain, because I know they did this in my history classes growing up, they play
mm,
this movie as a way to teach about medieval history.
oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a little rough.
Yeah, that is rough, all right. But like, if we continue our conversation from last week, where we had the Battle of Stirling Bridge, for example, a battle that doesn't even have Stirling Bridge in it, and yet Stirling Bridge is a huge part of the battle itself. Instead, and don't get me wrong, this is probably the most accurate part of the movie, is that they do actually the battle starts off the Battle of Stirling Bridge in the movie starts off with a pike formation, which to a certain degree is somewhat true. Okay, there is they at this point, the likes of William Wallace is going down and using pike formations in the lowland areas to take on the likes of the English, especially against English cavalry and English spear formations and stuff. So there is a certain level of truth when they went into their pike formation at the start. But then they get this formation and they just roll it into a ball and just chuck it into the bin, because what they do next is just like a bunch of lunatics run into the English formation.
Oh yeah.
But it gets crazier
I mean,
because the ink one,
well, it's like,
the
obviously those barbarian savage Scots, because, and these are all obviously Highlanders because of the way they're dressed, by the way. Um,
mm, mm,
they
mm,
obviously have no battle, they didn't use battle tactics, right? They won their battles by sheer
mm,
force of will. Philip, come on.
yeah. But it gets more insane because then the English also drop all of their shields and then they run directly at the Scottish as well. Like both sides, formation, put into a ball, chucked into a bin. We're going Hollywood here. We're running formation against formation. Chuck that out the window. We're just going to go into a blur and start dueling. What was it? 1,000 men on a field, 1,000 on one side, 1,000 on the other side, 2,000 men just dueling. What?
Single combat, my friend. Single combat by the
Yes.
thousands.
Jesus. Rachel, your sound is getting a bit weird there. I don't know what's going on that side.
That's because I switched
Uh,
my headset.
ah.
Let's see. Let's see if I
How's everyone else finding Rachel's sound, or is it just myself?
I don't. That's a good question.
Oh,
Everyone, how
that's
is
much
my
better.
sound?
I
Okay. Sometimes you just have
think
to hit the button twice. Uh, yeah,
did you see the mistake just after they threw a
through the boulders. First off, the,
baseball cap? Who's got the baseball cap?
okay,
Yeah, there's all
oh,
kinds
oh
of
my God.
wild clothing there.
But
Like,
first off, I would like us all to take a moment to
that's it
appreciate the
though. Go
ridiculousness.
on.
Yeah, I'd like us to take a moment to appreciate the ridiculousness of the statement. Did you see the mistake just after they threw the boulders? Right? Like
Mm,
throwing boulders? What? No, we don't throw boulders, right? The stones that were used, the ammunition that was used in trebuchets and catapults weren't boulders. You didn't just go find a freaking rock somewhere, right? Because those aren't aerodynamic. God,
mm.
it's so frustrating. It's like, just try a little harder, please,
Uh,
Hollywood. Try a little harder, just a little harder.
mm, 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 mm. There is, in fairness, Susan, there is a point where the Irish are joining the war in this, and I'll talk about it. What was it today? And I'll talk about it another bit tomorrow. Was it next? Well, probably not next week, but the week after when we do a part three on this. But Susan, yeah, you definitely hit the nail on the head there. That it's quite funny. But my favorite line is when the Scots ask the Irish for help, and the Irish are basically saying, "What's in it for me?" The Scots answer, "With killing the English," and the Irish are basically saying, "Sign me us up." There is, a bit of truth to that, with especially with the O'Neills and stuff, because they have a very good relationship with the likes of the Bruces at this point. And I'll go into a wee bit more of that after the Battle of Stirling Bridge, because there's a bit of complication that the movie slightly skips over. But I'll talk about that in a bit when we'll call after the Battle of Stirling Bridge. Now, with the Battle of Stirling Bridge, as I said there, they just go into weird loose formations, as you can see there, and then they just smash into the English, who also have an advantage at this point of just keeping into their formation and just poking the Scots to death while holding their spear was it shields up. But they don't do that. The movie decides everyone will just run at each other and start dueling. Okay, so that's what the movie does, and eventually, as Rachel had pointed out, the Scottish brute strength, me stronger, wins against the weaker English men with their smaller sausages.
Right, right.
That's what wins ultimately, and that's what the movie kind of portrays. The reality is that on the day, William Wallace, as dressed like this, of
Of
course.
course. Listen, in the middle of flames, just calmly
Yes.
standing there, right?
Mm, of course. William Wallace goes into, he actually has a plan beforehand. So, what actually happens on the day of the battle is that the English, do you want to go on? I'll put you up here again. The English, so you can see there, if I can get, I've got a little thing there. You can see the Scottish on this side with William Wallace and his military force here. And I'm just going to simplify this battle downwards. And then you can see the English on the other side. Now, up to this point, the English, no, first, it needs to be really, really highlighted, first and foremost, is that the Scottish are at the very start of this war to fighting the Norwegians. The Scottish had just finished the Scottish Norwegian War before the Scottish War of Independence, right? That means the Scottish military force was adjusted to fighting the Norwegians on land and sea and was specifically designed for fighting Norwegians, okay? The English are not Norwegians. The English don't rely on ships, and they don't rely on land, what was it, ground formations and stuff. The English rely on, well, infantry formations. The English rely on cavalry. They rely on arrow formations, as in shooting lower longbows, and they also then eventually rely on what was it called, shield and spear formations and stuff, and holding the line, right? Which is something that the Scottish are not at the very start or adjusted to, right? That's not to say William Wallace is in the same dire situation, okay? And that's important. But the English don't know this. The English don't know the background of William Wallace's forces. The English now at this point are used to fighting lowlanders that are used to fighting Norwegians, okay? So they English at this point think the Scottish are useless and are just not made for warfare, because so far they've been beating up Scots. They've had various battles now against the Scottish, who were literally, they're just plowing down. They're knocking over really, really easy. Especially even when it comes down to siege warfare, there's a lot of Wood and Bailey castles. The English are rocking up and doing, Jesus, these castles are so easy to wipe out, right? So up to this point, the English are having a really easy time beating the Scottish. But then in comes William Wallace and his force. His military force is not like the other military forces that were down in the lowland areas. His military force has gone between, and that's the same with the Bruce's military force has been going between Scotland and Ireland. So there's which is the blur of the Gaelic world up to this point. So William Wallace has in his military force the likes of hobblers. He has more lighter infantry in there. He's got a mixture. He's got a mixture of lowlanders and Highland, quote unquote Highlanders, Gaelic inside his military force, which is really important because some of those Gaelic have experience going over to Ireland to fight the English. So they're more adjusted to fighting the English. And the English are not aware of this, right?
So, you know,
Well, the
the
main
interesting,
English
the,
generals. So
the,
the
the,
main
the,
English.
the interesting thing about, you know, you're going, we're actually aware of all of this strategy,
Mm,
and and as we said earlier, there's not a single bit of strategy that is presented
yes.
in the actual movie depiction.
Mm,
It's like some kind of sword and sandal epic just set
mm,
in a muddy and wet and cold place.
yeah.
Um, there's a couple of people have been chiming in, but great movie. I think he's talking
Mm,
about Braveheart. So a movie
yeah.
can be a great movie and still be terrible when it comes to the history.
I love the movie. I do love the movie. Don't get me wrong. I have a load of childhood memories of the movie. I love the movie, but there is a lot of historical inaccuracies in there. Caveman literally hits a nail on the head as well. The terrain was on the Scottish advantage, the marshy lands, and the narrow. Yeah, 100%. But the great advantage to this one is that they were more adjusted. William Wallace and his force was more adjusted for this battle than the previous battles before, and that's really important. But this one is that what adds into this is that the English are not adjusting to these changes that are happening. In fact, they think that the Scottish are incompetent. So they're like some of these military advisors are telling the head commanders to flank around. So where it says river fort there, some of the English are advising the head commanders to use the shallow end of that to flank the Scottish around and completely hammer them in with their cavalry. So they're saying the night before to send their cavalry up through the river and then flank the Scottish, which would have actually won them the victory. They could have actually won the battle if they had actually done that. They don't do this. They want to plow as quick as they can, plow through the bridge, and then just plow through the Scottish. That's the plan. They want to get out there as quick as possible. They don't want to piss around. So what happens is, as I said there, even on top of that, we're still the English are expecting to go across the bridge and then set up their formation, their cavalry formation, and then just charge the Scottish, right? Which is even worse again. So as the English are going through the bridge, with a bing bang a bam, the Scottish quickly, using their hobble horses, quickly dismount. Well, they come up as far as they can. They gallop up as quick as they can, as Kevin has pointed out, right? Through the very rough terrain, quickly jump off their horses, and then they quickly, as the English are just having their heads up their ass and pointing their what was the horses and everything pointing the wrong way, are now being flanked around. So the Scottish come down here and they start to circle the bridge itself, smashing onto the right side as quick as they can before the English even know what's going on. They smash the right flank and they're now circling around the bridge. And they end up around the bridge itself making a mount of infantry, of spears, and they start to kill the English. And the thing is, the English don't stop. They start pushing. So on the end of the bridge, the English are pushing more English to get through, which causes an even higher butcher rate. William Wallace at this one point grabs one of the head generals and he starts skinning the back of one of these generals. Now, I don't know if he's alive or not, but regardless, William Wallace starts skinning him. And after the battle, he turns his skin into a belt and he wears the belt after the battle
So
itself,
wait,
allegedly.
whoa. I've got to call bullshit. What is the source for that? that
I don't
that
know, it's just everywhere.
no, see, that sounds like historian propaganda, and I don't
Mm-mm,
necessarily mean that it's English propaganda against the Scottish or the Scottish trying to bloviate. I mean, that sounds like a sensationalist historian from the Middle Ages trying to get
mm.
clicks.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would like to know what the source of that particular information is, because
Mm-mm,
that's pretty gruesome, but
mm.
also human skin doesn't necessarily make the best pelt.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
But it sounds cool, Rachel. I don't know what you're talking about.
yeah, I definitely, if anyone knows what the actual medieval source for that is, it's sort of like, we have late medieval sources for the way
Mm,
that Edward II dies, but not a single contemporary source that talks about it,
yeah,
about that
yeah.
horrible death, right?
Mm,
And so it's pretty much agreed now by historians that's just not true.
yeah, yeah,
And, flaying someone alive or flaying someone dead and using
yeah.
their skin to make a thing that you wear is generally horrifying to most normal humans.
Mm,
I mean, even the Germans were horrified when they heard about what had been happening in some
mm,
of the camps. You know what I mean?
mm,
So yeah, I would want to know the original primary source for that one.
mm. Um, Caveman! King Edward the First never himself lost a battle against the Scots. He also took. Ah, yeah. Well, the problem is that William Wallace got very, very unlucky. We'll talk about that next week. The battle between William Wallace and Edward the First. But in my opinion, I still think William Wallace, if his what was it, the cavalry with the nobles had done what they were supposed to do, there's still a good chance that William Wallace could have won that battle against Edward the First. So it doesn't help when your cavalry just decide, I'm going to leave. And then there's an entire conspiracy that even
Well,
in fairness, the movie itself does actually cover, like it does, that is one of the main points. Now, this first battle completely, like the fact it's missing the bridge is like, Jesus, you know? The second battle the second battle has a lot going on. Yeah, I'm not going to turn around to say the second battle is any better. That also has like a lot of wild stuff that goes on. But regardless, we'll get over that. Now, that was the easy part of the conversation, was to talk about the problems of the Battle of Stirling Bridge. We're now going into the more difficult part of the conversation, which is the difficult conversation of justifying if the war was legal or not. And that's the conversation. So at the next part, after the Battle of Stirling Bridge, there's kind of a big wash that happens over Scotland. I don't know how complicated it was in real life. Believe it or not, Scotland and the Scottish War of Independence isn't my field of expertise. So I couldn't really tell you how complicated it was to push the English out of Scotland at the time. Because something you need to take note of is up to this point, and this is why after this one, league, and it does cover this, slightly cover this in the movie. There's a few comments made of it, and the thing is that when all these comments are being made of, is this war, the Scottish War of Independence, from both the English side and the Scottish side, is it legal? Okay.
mm,
You see, what's happened is, technically speaking, Edward the First. So, although we are aware at this point, the Scottish owe homage to the English, okay, and it makes you aware of this both in the movie, and loads of academics make you aware of this. That technically speaking, Scotland owes homage to England, right?
right.
Because of the fact that they invited Edward the First to come over, and as part of that, they had to respect previous homages that go all the way back to William the Conqueror. Okay, so at this point, what was it called? The Scottish lords have to give homage to Edward, but technically speaking, Edward the First owes homage to the King of France. Okay, but what was it called? English pirates have been attacking French tradesmen, right? That's pissed off the King of France. So the King of France demanded and asked the what was it called? Edward the First to go to him in France, pay homage, and explain why English pirates are attacking. What was it called? Tradesmen going between France to England. Okay, Edward the First refuses to do so, and in retaliation and threatening him, the King of France turns around and says, if you do not come to France, your lands in France will be, what was it called? Removed.
Forfeit,
Forfeited,
forfeit.
that's the word, will be
Yeah.
forfeited. Once again, Edward the First refuses to do so. Now, this is complicated. The reason why it's complicated is because at this point in Scotland, Wales, England, and France, lands are mixed. We're not talking about nationalism at this point, right? So there's nothing that stops me if I have the money. Nothing stops me from buying land in Scotland. Nothing stops me from buying land in England, and nothing stops me from buying land in France. And that's what's happened, right? So you have a lot of landlords at this point that own lands left, right, and center. So if
Yeah.
you start to go to war, it's very confusing. Like, am I attacking your lands or am I? There's no black and white at this period. It's very mixed. So even when the King of France turns around and says, your lands are forfeited, whose lands are forfeited? Do you know? Especially when, who's loyal to, like, I could easily switch sides tomorrow. There's no nationalism. This season I could be loyal to Edward, but next season I could be loyal to the King of France. It's complicated, okay? So
Yeah, and
when
I think that's a modern people. It's hard for modern people to understand the concept
mm,
of I I own lands in multiple kingdoms and multiple polities. I therefore owe homage to those kings because technically, even if you buy the land, you don't own the land. The land is technically the king's, and you
mm,
are holding the land on the behalf of the king. So if you don't pay homage to the king,
mm,
then your lands are forfeit, right? So
yeah,
then when you have a three-sided war, and and you have lands in all three of those sides, yeah, if you choose wrong, you're
mm,
going to probably end up your lands may or may not be forfeit at the end of the conflict, depending on how the respective sovereign is feeling. Right?
mm. Oh, 100%. I definitely agree with that one. And you see, the problem is there, as you're pointing out there, it's really complicated and no one knows for sure what's legal and what's not legal. Now, although technically speaking, from the French side, what the Scots are doing is now legal for them to defend themselves and not give the moment, what was it called? Edward is now refusing to pay his homage up the hierarchy. It's Edward the First who's breaking the homage. That then gives, according to the French king, gives the green light to the Scots to then break their homage to Edward the First. Okay, at this point, right? However, that's not how the papacy looks at it. Okay, so the papacy at this point, they haven't agreed to what's left or what's right. Right? They haven't said anything to this point. But later on, they outright excommunicate a whole load of Scottish nobles, right? Because to them, they should have still paid homage to the King of England. Now, me and Rachel, we've been reading a lot of what was it called, medieval sources, and let's be honest here, the popes, they're not really non-biased. They have their biasm, and it could be down to the fact that they didn't support the Pope did not support the King of France for one thing or another. So that could be why the papacy has decided to ignore the fact that Edward the First is refusing to pay his homage to the King of France, which then allows legally for the Scots to not pay homage and attack the English inside of Scotland. So there.
Right.
And this doesn't get fully explained. Instead, when they go to explain this to William Wallace and ask William Wallace what his political views are, he just starts screaming freedom to their face and telling them that the country of Scotland needs to be unified. And that's where he starts screaming, which probably is somewhat true, given that William Wallace did the real life William Wallace did get captured and hung, drawn, and quartered, and his defense was, "Sure, I didn't know. Sure, aren't I Scottish?" So maybe it's not far off the truth in many ways. But
Yeah,
go on,
I don't know, but the idea of him screaming Scotland needs to unify as one country,
yeah.
that wasn't really such a concept in this era. And
Yeah, the problem is that he had previously done the movie The Patriot, and a lot of film critics can see similarities between the movie The
oh,
Patriot.
the Patriot came after Braveheart, long
Or
after
was it?
Braveheart. Yeah,
Ah,
yeah,
right, right.
yeah.
What I was reading actually said the complete opposite way around, but that
Mm-mm.
wouldn't surprise me because I
Patriot came
know.
later.
Okay, but I know people are saying, all right, that there's tons of similarities of the language of unification and country between the Patriot
Yeah.
and Braveheart. That there's a lot of similarities there between the two movies. And also on top of that as well, a movie that actually does get it right, and what Mel Gibson should have gone for at the start, is We Were Soldiers. When he talks about patriotism and what was it called, nationalism and united country, he's 100% bang on right. We are soldiers. So the
Well,
message is, sorry, was that Rachel?
yeah, I was going to say, of course he got it right, and we were soldiers. That's
Mm.
modern nationalism.
Yes, 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 yes. So the message itself, I fully agree with, and I think everybody agrees with it when it's applied into the movie. We are soldiers, but I'm not. To be honest with you, this is way out of my field of expertise when it
So,
comes down
so
to
the
the movie
Patriot,
Patreon.
that's more my area of
Oh,
expertise
yeah.
because I'm a Northeasterner from the
Oh,
United States,
nice.
and the Revolutionary War is hammered into our essence from the time we can start listening to words.
Mm,
At least it was in mine. So,
mm,
I mean, the thing is that at the time the Patriot takes place, you've got 13 colonies,
mm.
14 technically, but 13 that actually come
Sorry,
together. But they,
Rachel. That volume is acting up again. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know either.
It was going for a bit, and then it just went kind of off. On my side, I'm not sure what's going on your side, guys.
Okay.
Oh, that's
What
perfect.
are you hearing
That's
now?
it.
So I
No,
keep
it's perfect.
having
That's it.
to, it's, I don't know what the hell's going on. I click on headset, then back to Bluetooth headset, and the sound fixes itself. I hate technology so much. Anyway, um, uh, anyway, ideally I would use a proper microphone, but then I couldn't hear you.
uh,
So yeah, because of Restream doesn't work well with that. Anyway, so the during the late 18th, so the last quarter of the 18th century, the colonies are 13 separate colonies. They're basically like 13 separate little countries,
mm,
right? They don't view themselves as being part of the same polity or being unified in any way. So you are
oh,
a Virginian, you're a Pennsylvanian, you're from Massachusetts, you're from the Carolinas, right? You are not an American. And
mm,
they did also view themselves as British. So this
mm,
weird idea that they didn't view themselves as British that's a modern post era construct, right?
mm, mm,
So
mm, mm,
so the character of the Patriot saying we need to unify, that was the thing that was actually being said at the time by the founding
mm, mm.
fathers. Thomas Paine, for instance, wrote a
Yeah.
whole tract on that. So the idea in the 18th century that we need to unify if we're going to survive, that is true. That is
Mm, mm.
100% true. But what is also true is that a lot of people were dubious about doing so. Like, oh, yeah, but
Ah,
those Pennsylvanians, they can't understand what it's like to be a Virginian, right? They have
mm,
different
mm, mm.
needs than we do.
Yeah.
So, if we come together, is this actually in our interest to unify?
Mm.
So that was a problem at the time.
Ah, right, sure. And I understand where critics are coming from there because it's sort of the same. Except it's I think it's more even more complicated again when it comes down to Scotland. As you can see there, all of the realms, these king groups are all just fractured into a dozen little groups, and this is sort of the reality what's on the ground. When I say this is complicated, because as you can see there, some of those lands and territories are owned by people who are also living in England as well and France. So some of that land is belonging to what was it called? French nobles and English nobles. So it's complicated. So when people are drawing out, okay, so who are we going to war with? What's legal and what's not legal? You can see why it's just one massive mess in Scotland. And I know this is a very modern map, but what I'm trying to say is that this map here identifies that this is more of a medieval map compared to this. This is our modern interpretation of the United Kingdom and Ireland. Much more tidier. Like lands are in Scotland are belonging to Scotland. Lands are in England are belonging to England. You can identify where the border is between Scotland and England in our modern day. That is not the reality of Scotland in this era.
Well,
It's a
and that's
complete
that's
mess.
that's not the reality of almost any area of Europe. If you look at a map of, say,
Mm,
1450 Europe, say the what is now France, Belgium, and the Netherlands,
Yeah.
it looks like someone fired a shotgun at it with paint pellets of different colors,
Yeah.
because you've got lands here that out scattered here that belong to the are in the Dominion of Burgundy. You've got lands out here that are part of France, and you've got lands here that are England still,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
they're all intermixed. There are no solid. There are very few contiguous borders in this era. It
Mm.
just that's not how medieval geopolitics worked.
Yeah. And the thing is, as well, is that during the Scottish War of Independence, there's actually a sort of 10-year blur between William Wallace to then the Bruce. And the reason why there's a somewhat blur in there is because people are trying to decide what's legal and not legal. And although the Bruce eventually does get himself excommunicated because the papacy doesn't recognize the war between Scotland and England as legal from the perspective of the Scottish. It does see it as like everything that what was it called? Edward the First is doing is according to the papacy defense. He's defend poor Edward the First legally, according to the papacy, is defending himself against these evil, brutish Scottish. Not my view or interpretation, but the view and interpretation of the papacy at the time. Okay, that this was all defense, which is funny, Rachel, because that's not how he sees things for the Irish. The Irish are also writing letters before the Irish go to war with England. They also write letters to the papacy, and the difference being is that the Pope never writes anything back to the Irish that we are aware of. There doesn't seem to be any surviving letters, but the Irish then go to war with the Scottish, and no Irish people are excommunicated. So maybe the papacy said, okay, you guys can legally go to war with England. Scotland, not allowed to. So there, but the thing is that we're not sure, right? So, and the thing is now at this point, after the Battle of Stonebridge, and why this turns into a big, massive headache for Robert the Bruce
Oh
is
God.
because of the fact that William Wallace, because he had a feud with some sheriff, eventually led and escalated to the Battle of Stirling Bridge. This now is a big, and also at this point as well, William Wallace was granted the guardianship of Scotland, which means that the likes of the Bruces and stuff have given the thumbs up to this. But at the same time, there are also all these nobles are having meetings to see what is legal and not legal. So you can see why the Bruce is also having meetings. Rachel, do you not like the outfit of the Bruce? No.
I mean, he looks like a Jon Snow wannabe. Um,
What
yeah, no, I'm sorry. Could you please show us the one where he's cosplaying a sheep?
is this one here? Is it?
Yeah, that one. Yeah, where he's cosplaying a sheep. So yeah,
Mm,
this is so I don't understand why medieval in people's minds equals lots of hides, right?
mm,
Un Unfinished fur that is kept. Basically, it's just put on the body as a hide with the fur turned out and the skin against your body. I
mm.
mean, I've looked at this and I'm like, Jesus, is that a 14th century ghillie suit for a sheep-rich
Yeah.
environment? Like, does he need to go out and hide amongst the black sheep so that he can sneak up on enemies?
Oh, switch back to the
No,
one.
it is absolutely, there is nothing there that is even a little bit medieval. It's all fantasy.
Mm, mm.
Those heavy chains, I'm not certain what's going on there. Is he trying to be a gangster?
No, that's his
Excuse me,
Earl. That's his
sorry,
Earlship.
sorry, gangsta.
Aye.
This is not the era of collars of state.
Mm,
Collars of state are not a thing yet.
yeah.
But also that's still not a collar of state by any
Mm.
state color I've seen in evidence from the Middle Ages. The riveted clothing, I don't understand this fascination with riveted clothing, right?
Mm,
Brigand coat, a coat of plates, brigandine, right? But
yeah.
that's later 14th century. That
Mm,
isn't this
mm,
era.
yeah.
Um, and why is he just walking around in a coat of plates anyway? Like this is not how he would have dressed. So he would have dressed in. We actually have some. Did you take any of the pictures over from last week's? Because those all
Yeah,
still
they're all
apply.
here if you want. Which one do you want to look at?
Yeah,
I've got
pick
both the.
pick any representation of a 13th late any of the kings, any of the men. Pick
I've
any
got
of
this
them.
one. This one's the first one. Do you want to keep scrolling down or?
Yeah, and you know, put me on top so that that's like in the middle.
Give us a second. There we go. Oh, that's
Yeah,
way
okay.
better. Didn't that came out
Yeah,
perfect because you can see
yeah,
that perfectly now.
yeah. So yeah, this is the French royal family,
Hmm.
but so maybe one of the ones of like a knight or something, because that's more like him,
I'm
right?
just
So
scrolling down on
so
these ones.
he should be wearing several tunics. He
Hmm.
probably would be wearing a cloak because it's Scotland, and as you can see, the sun never shines, obviously.
Hmm.
They haven't, as far as I can tell by medieval movies, sunshine hasn't been invented yet. Neither
Yeah, I know,
has
right?
dry dirt.
Hmm.
It's all mud. It's all mud, right? So he would actually be wearing against his skin. I actually have a replica, a reproduction of an extant 13th century linen shirt, right? And this
Hmm.
is basically what he would be wearing. It has long sleeves that go all the way to his wrists. It's got a V collar, and it has gores in the middle that give it, in the front and back middle, that give it enough width that you can pull it over your head and shoulders and chest easily, right? And
Hmm.
this is a replica of one that was owned by Saint Louis, the sainted king of France in the 13th century. You can go visit it in Notre Dame in
Hmm.
Paris, by the way. So he would have this against his skin, right?
Hmm.
Everyone had linen shirts against their skin unless they were so poor that they were just walking around in rags, but there weren't many people like that. So he'd have this
Hmm.
against his skin, and then he'd have a tunic that was not terribly differently shaped over top of that. It would be a little bit longer, it would have bores on the sides, but basically also something like this shape. And then he'd wear
Hmm.
a belt with it. And he'd probably wear a
Yeah.
tunic, another tunic over top of that. He might, depending, I don't know what his personal his expenses were, his income was,
Hmm.
but I expect he probably had at least one silk tunic in his possession. Um,
Yeah.
so this depiction of him constantly in leather, riveted leather garments, is nonsense. People did not wear leather as a general standard course. It just wasn't their fashion choice.
Hmm.
Excuse me. So yeah, and his hair. It's like, why can't he comb his hair? Or
Let
it's
me pop back over the photo again.
yeah, this is
There he is.
yeah. He looks unkempt, and he looks like a 19th century poet. Like this could be Lord Byron. Maybe that's his Lord
Hmm.
Byron face. I don't know. There's right. This isn't the style of hair that men generally had in this era. That the
Oh,
side.
sorry, Rachel. The fishbowl sound is back again.
Oh,
Sorry
forgot.
about that.
I don't understand.
Hmm.
I don't. Is it bad? Is it better? I just switched.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's
apparently
perfect.
every, I don't
I
know,
don't know.
5 minutes I have to switch from my Bluetooth to regular headset back to Bluetooth. So technology, man, I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know what's going on today. Okay, yeah.
I
So
don't know either.
did they have leather jackets? No. No, leather jackets are not a thing in the 13th and 14th centuries. There is
Hmm.
so little evidence of leather garments in this era. It's not in the expense accounts, it's not in the archaeology. Leather is a pain in the ass to take care of as a
Hmm.
garment. And it would stain your clothes, right? So if you wore, which you would not want to wear a linen garment against your skin. That would be so unpleasant. You would sweat, it would get nasty. So you'd want a linen shirt like this against your skin. So then if you're wearing a leather tunic over top of it, then this is going to get stained and
Hmm.
whatever, colors your leather has been tanned. So no, there's no
Hmm.
evidence of leather as a fashion choice, fashion fabric in this era. Wool and silk for the overgarments, linen for the garments that go against your skin. That's just the reality. And he would be wearing something that's colorful. It would be colorful,
Hmm.
everyone. Not these browns and blacks and beiges. It would be red, it would be blue, it would be green. Not so much evidence of yellow in this era, actually, ironically.
Hmm.
Purples, right? Beautiful, bright colors. Not
Oh,
dark
it's
and
back
depressing.
again. Oh, sorry about that, Rachel. I apologize for the computer, by the way, not for me. Yeah.
Okay, I give up on the. Can you say something?
1, 2, 3. 1, 2,
Oh,
3.
see.
Sound is much
Okay,
better
I've turned
anyway,
my
that's the main
headset
thing.
off. I don't know why it's not playing ball today, but I can't hear you now. So that's not good.
Oh, lovely.
Fantastic. Okay, hold on. Okay, say something. Anything?
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing. 1, 2,
Nope,
3.
I've got no
Nope.
sound. Yeah,
Oh,
you
the
can hear
jazz.
me. I can't hear anyone else. Pea Shivers, thank you for that. Lovely. Can everyone hear
checked.
me? I can't hear a single thing Philip is saying
We can
now.
all hear it though. We can all hear
Let me know if you can
you.
hear me.
I can send her a private message there, chat.
Fun. This is
Well, it is
great.
private chat. 1 second.
Let me see. I wonder if
Yeah.
I leave and come back, if that will fix it. Hold on.
Yeah, it probably will.
Hold
Go for
on.
it. Go for it.
Okay. Let's see if I can convince the sound to come out.
Sounds
Okay, wait,
great
got it.
on
Okay,
Rachel's
fixed it.
side. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, did you fix
Yeah,
it? Fix
I
it.
sound good. Now Philip sounds
Nice.
good. Okay, unfortunately, that means you all are going to be
Okay.
picking up on any little sound I happen to make here, but thus technology. As Philip and I have often said, we don't do medieval living history because we love modern technology. Not at all.
Sounds sometimes better though. That's the main thing.
Yeah. Let me see. Okay. Okay. Well, I can sort of hear you, but not particularly well. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, the clothing should be bright. It should be colorful. He should have a flowing. All of them, all of these men should have flowing garments. If you want to switch back to any of the men, not the French royal family, yeah. So this is a king. This is how a king would dress, right? But I did include, yeah. So they should have flowing garments. They should have flowing garments and belted at the waist, and maybe a coif on his head, and probably a hood. At this phase, right? So yeah, nothing like what he's wearing at all. The emo Byron look is definitely not accurate. Sadly. Yeah. Very, very sadly.
And the clothing, this is something we kind of trip over as well, is mixing up the clothing in Scotland with the 13th century, with the 17th and 18th century, with
Yeah.
the William Knight and Jacobite Wars. We kind of trip over that all the time. And I'm not going to turn around and say, hey, I'm a saint as well, especially with the great kilt about. Tell me, Rachel, when does the great kilt become a thing? When does that start to appear?
Yeah, the great kilt doesn't make an appearance until the tail end of the 16th century. And it's not this really formally pleated thing that people imagine it is. It's the earliest depiction of a great kilt is from like the 1590s. And that's also the first time we see mention of men putting their plaids on in that manner. Before that, it's actually women who were putting on an arised and kilting it, belting it, not men. And that's only in the 16th century for all of that. It's the 16th century when apparently people in the Highlands, Scotland, it's getting colder and colder and colder. And so they get the idea to just take a blanket. Literally, that's what the word plaid means, by the way, blanket. To take a blanket and put it on themselves and wrap themselves in it. And then eventually someone says, well, this is really inconvenient to just be walking around in a giant rectangle. If we belt it around the waist over top of our clothes that we're already wearing, then we can have the freedom to use our arms to do things and it won't keep sliding off of our bodies. So that's kind of the origin story of the kilt. Big rectangle, blanket of wool, wrapped around yourself, belted for convenience. And then as the 17th century wears on, people get the idea, for the men anyway, well, we can actually make these gathers a little more even under the belt. And then eventually someone gets the idea, I assume, to just sew those pleats into place, right? But that is not the 16th century. In the 16th century, it's just a giant rectangle belted around the waist. You can leave it as long or as short as you want, but it's worn over top of a doublet and an undershirt and hosen. It's not just worn over just a linen shirt. It's worn over top of all those other layers. So yeah, with 14th century, it's not even a gleam in the milkman's eye, as as a quote from season 3 of Blackadder.
All right. Mihal, what the hell are you doing up at this time? Go to bed.
Go to bed, man.
Are you okay, Mihal?
Are you
Definitely,
okay?
you're always welcome onto the stream,
Do,
Mihal. If
do
you
we
can't
need to
sleep.
send help?
As long as Mihal is grand, that's the main thing.
Yeah, it's just
This
it,
same
it
argument goes on to because the next scene after this, so we see the meeting between what was it called, William Wallace and the Bruce at the time, uh, and the two of them talk about the legal what's going on legally and stuff, and then it goes on to the fighting between the John Bailey, the Cummings, and the Bruce family, who at the time are all three families, by the way, are arguing over who should be the rightful king of Scotland. So not only do we have the fighting between the Scots and the English to legally see who's legally allowed to murder each other, but we also have legally the fighting between the three major families, which is the what's it called? The Bruces, Cummings, and the Baileys. All three of those families are arguing amongst each other who can legally kill who or legally dismiss the other one out of the, I suppose, quote unquote, realm at the time, so they
right,
themselves can become heads of the Scottish kingship.
right.
So a lot of legal fighting going on at this point.
And I think that's another aspect of this whole situation, this series of conflicts that get
Mm,
lumped into the heading the Scottish War for Independence that people forget or want to forget or just of which they're unaware, is that, you've got these families who are infighting, right?
mm,
It's all for them, it's about power, right? This
yeah,
isn't about what's best for the state. This is
mm,
about what's best for us.
yeah.
Right. None of those families are interested in, stepping aside because maybe this other family has a better claim or might make better rulers, right? No, no, no.
Mm.
Not a concern.
Mm-mm. No, don't get me wrong. It's like they're about to form these sentences to explain this to William Wallace, played by Mel Gibson. But then he always kind of dismisses it in the movie by just start screaming about, "But you don't understand. We the cloud." And this becomes a running theme that I even have today, where people ask me like, "Oh, why didn't the clans of Ireland come together to get rid of the Irish? Sorry, the English." And
The Irish.
yeah, yeah, the Irish critiquing the Irish out. There you go. We'll finally learned your lesson there, huh? Ireland's will finally work, Roachy. Huh? I suppose, At least if it was all English people, then it would finally probably click, I guess. There's an Irish man going, yeah, let's kick him out as well. But regardless, what was it called? Oh, my train of thought. It is the Scots who are trying to justify themselves. And then you've got Mel Gibson, played by William Wallace, who's there screaming at his top of his voice during these meetings. Freedom! You don't understand. The clans need to come together. We need to free Scotland.
Right.
Mm.
And then the question comes, and of this, the answer to this, I'm less certain of because I haven't looked at the war side of this so much.
Mm.
Are there any contemporary sources that use the word freedom in connection to this set of conflicts?
Just reading it, big capitals in English as well, not even in what was it called, any spoken language in that area at the time. No, in bold English, modern English, not even old English, bold modern English. It says freedom in the Annals of Ulster. In what was it, 1280. There it is in the Annals of Ulster. Freedom, bold English writing. Facts.
Really?
Aye.
Really?
Oh, aye. What was it called? Jim O'Neill. Merry Christmas to Philip and Rachel, all in the chat. Merry Christmas as well to yourself, Jim. I hope it's a good one as well. Any presents? Are you getting presents this year, Jim? I do wonder if because I'm over in Japan, I do wonder if my presents will come in time, if I get any. By post.
I think
Go on.
I think this is a good point to reiterate what we were saying at the beginning of the stream, which is a movie can be a good movie because of the movie itself, right? The problem that I have, and probably you have with this movie, is that a lot of people take it as history. And
Yeah.
and their only understanding of medieval Scottish history at all comes from this movie. And no one, just like with AI nowadays,
Mm.
AI search results, no one will look deeper to actually come to the real truth. And the misrepresentation of history on so many levels is so egregious that this movie is in a certain way dangerous.
Mm.
Because of the level of misinformation that it actually has virally spread throughout the world.
Yeah. Painted blue,
Oh, here we
huh?
go. Tea with
That
Tash.
hasn't happened yet. We haven't. That doesn't happen in the Battle of Stirling Bridge. It's the next one. The Battle of what was it called? Oh my God, what's the second battle called? Starts with an F. It's gone out of my head right now. But we'll cover that next. We'll talk about that next week because we still have loads of bitching to do.
Well, in
Uh,
general,
go
though,
on.
so I'll briefly talk about the so-called the woad painting. So they weren't doing
Mm.
woad painting in this era. It's done. It's not happening. There's no evidence of it, is what I'll say. That is a practice that is debatable even in the ancient Celtic and ancient Pictish cultures, right? There's a lot of debate
Mm.
amongst archaeologists and historians what exactly was being described by Roman chroniclers when they talked about the people being blue or being painted blue. Did they really mean paint or did they mean tattoos, for instance? Right.
Mm.
So even that isn't as cut and dry. We know that, the ancient Celts and the ancient Picts did something to make their skin
Mm.
colorful. But whether it was paint or not, that's highly debated. But it's definitely not a practice in late 13th, early 14th century Scotland. And there's no evidence that William Wallace resurrected this ancient practice about which he somehow knew, because
Mm.
medieval people were generally not aware of their own history. So it's not like he would have probably even had that knowledge to be able to resurrect it.
Mm. What was it called? The Battle of Falkirk. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one I'm talking
Yeah.
about. The one where in the movie they paint their face blue, but in reality they were too busy trying to hold the formation while being shot off arrows.
Clans and Dynasties.
Oh,
Is that Mihal? Is that Mihal? Is that Clans and
yeah,
Dynasties?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mel
That's me
Gibson
holding there.
shouting Libertas might not have hit as hard.
Oh, I.
Nice. Oh my
Mm.
God. I hope that AI Clips picks that soundbite out.
Oh, aye, that'd be good. All right, like, where was I going? Oh, yeah. So the next scene after this one, which again brings up two very interesting, what was it
Oh my
called?
God.
Topics. First off, the clothing. Rachel, straight away.
Jesus
Boom.
Christ.
What's wrong with the clothing, Rachel? Clearly, that's close enough, isn't
No,
it?
not even a little bit. So that's Edward II and Piers Gaveston, right? And
Yeah,
Pierce is on the left as we're looking at him. He's the lover, right? Supposedly the lover.
yeah,
I'll say the lover.
yeah.
He's a favorite. He's a favorite of Edward II. I'll stick to that because that's more easily provable than the lover part. But Piers Gaveston is depicted in a short sleeve tunic with bare arms.
Mm,
This is like the worst medieval market clothing you can imagine. There are certain reenactment or medieval recreation groups that have knights who definitely wear just short sleeve tunics and bare arms like that, but that is
mm,
not a medieval practice at all, unless he's fleeing. And they don't even have short sleeve tunics. Aren't even a thing in this era. There aren't short sleeve tunics. I
mm,
have zero evidence of short sleeve tunics in the late 13th, early 14th century. Never seen it.
mm,
But a tunic on bare skin, no. Just no. Again, our boy Piers should be wearing a linen shirt under an
mm,
equally long sleeve linen shirt, under an equally long sleeve tunic, and probably another tunic over top of it if it's cold. And his tunic could now they've got him in it looks like a silk tunic, right? And
mm,
that's actually probably accurate because he was a favorite of Edward II, and we know that Edward II gifted him silk clothing. However,
mm,
the clothing he gifted him have full sleeves because Edward II was he wasn't the second yet. He was Prince Edward, Crown Prince of England, and he could afford to give his favorite a long sleeve tunic instead of a tunic with shamefully short sleeves. And the shape of the tunic it's just kind of like, it's shapeless. They wouldn't have been shapeless. They would have had shapes. They would have had an actually kind of figure mirroring shape, because the tunics in this era for men have 4 triangular gores, 2 in front, 2 on the sides, so that you actually get skirts that are actually full and flare out. And I know that's not manly by modern standards. It's not manly for men to wear dresses with skirts, but that was the style for men for most of human history in the West. So yeah, he shouldn't be just wearing a short sleeve tunic like he's some kind of gym rat.
The next major topic, and the comment section is definitely highlighting as well, is the homosexuality that pops up in this scene as well. Like, this is pretty much the scene where Edward II is screaming that he's having sexual relationships with his, as the lads are saying in the comment section, his favorite.
Right.
First and foremost, because this is something, because when it comes down to homosexuality being gay, I've covered it in the 10th century, right? During university and stuff, and I've done it recently as well. And now I have to make it clear, I do not know anything really when it comes down to the 13th century. It's just not my sphere of expertise when it comes down to homosexuality in the 13th and 14th century. But when it comes down to the 10th century, it surprisingly, as Dr. Claire Downham has pointed out, in Ireland, it seems to be a case of, well, if you're a masculine gay man, that seems to be acceptable because you have these masculine gay men going out there and committing SA on other men. And that's, looked upon as somewhat acceptable compared to the victim. The victim seems to be demasculated. If you're, as they call, a bottom, you're considered unnatural. That's not acceptable to be considered feminine and submissive and stuff in the 10th century. From the perspective of the 13th century, because I know you're about to say something else about the clothing. What just before you tear back into the clothing again, tell me, what's the perspective of homosexuality in the 13th and 14th century, Rachel?
Yeah, so so we have, I've actually looked into the topic of homosexuality across medieval Europe. Could you put me on top?
Yeah, no problems.
Okay. Yeah, I've looked into the topic of homosexuality across medieval Europe, and it's not as cut and dry. So the reason I say we're not certain about the nature of Edward's relationship with his favorites, because someone said, isn't the word favorite just a term for best friend? Yeah, but often the term favorite ends up being applied to male best friends of the king who are super intimate with the king, and to kings who don't have many children with their queens or have female mistresses, right? So that's the key, right? It's one thing if you don't have many children with your queen, but you've got lots of bastards with your mistresses. It's another thing if you don't have children with your queen and you also don't have mistresses, right? That's when it starts to get a little questionable. And Edward II, as would become, was famous or infamous for surrounding himself with male favorites, right? He had a very man-heavy court, shall we say. And he just went from favorite to favorite, right? Piers Gaveston gets executed, torn apart. He gets another favorite. So was their relationship homosexual? Historians are leaning towards very likely. But, again, there's a whole bunch of propaganda history that's written after his execution that is intended, it's written in a certain way to make it seem like, Isabella did the right thing. So in the interest of that, you have to present Edward II in a certain light that would slander him in the annals of history and to his people. So, there's a lot of questions about the exact nature of his homosexuality. I mean, he had a son. He had Edward III with Isabella. So clearly he was bisexual in a certain way, at least, functionally bisexual.
It's complicated though, isn't
Yeah,
it? Because
it's
we had the
really,
same thing happening in New York well, pretty much all over the world. But remember, it got very famous in New York in the 60s, 70s, and 80s for New York businessmen because it was frowned upon in New York in the 60s, 70s, and 80s for these massive, huge millionaires in New York, the top businessmen, to be homosexual, so that they hid a lot of it until the AIDS crisis kind of exploded, not just in New York, by the way. But the reason why I highlight New York is because, from my, maybe Rachel, you can correct me on this one, I think the New York businessmen had it really bad in the 60s, 70s, and 80s because they had to hide their sexuality.
yeah,
And then there was a kind of witch hunt. Now this happened throughout not just America, all over the world, of course. But I just feel like it got really bad in New York. This kind of homosexual witch hunt that was going on, if I'm not mistaken. And I feel like it's kind of somewhat the same thing here as well, to a certain degree, of hiding to a certain degree your homosexual, that you're gay, but the circle
right.
kind of knows you're gay at the same time. Like,
Yeah, it was definitely, yeah, 20th century was a pretty rough time for
mm,
homosexuals, and yeah, across the world, and it's not necessarily getting much better in certain places.
yeah,
But in the Middle Ages, in this era, it wasn't the kind of taboo that it has become in later times, right?
mm,
It's in fact, some of I don't know if we want to go down this path,
mhm,
but one of the most famous passages in the Old Testament that supposedly forbids or prohibits or indicates the immorality of homosexuality doesn't actually talk about homosexuals. It's the
mm,
Sodom and Gomorrah story
yeah,
that talks about all of the evil people who are in the city.
mm,
And in the original language, they talk the quote everyone talks about now is it's homosexuals are one of the people. But if you go back to the original language, it's actually pederasts,
mm,
which are not homosexuals.
yeah,
Pederasts or pedophiles, right?
yeah,
But at some point that translation was purposely changed. In the Lutheran translation of the Bible, it's still pederasts, for instance, in the
mm,
German. And I'm not going to say the German word.
mm,
Uh, but late, like in the 19th century is when that change happens, when the
mm,
translation change happens. So there has been an intentional, in more recent times, an intentional slandering of homosexuality to
mm,
make it to somehow tie it into biblical morality, etc. So that wasn't necessarily part of the medieval mindset. In the medieval world, what was important for a king is that you had heirs, right?
mm,
What you did in your private time mattered a lot less. Now, you're right.
yeah,
There is definitely an idea that if you're the who's the top and who's the bottom, right?
yeah,
That did matter. Are you
mm,
the dominant in this relationship? Then it's cool. That's
yeah.
good. If you're the submissive in this relationship, if you're the bottom, you're going to get mocked. But that's a question of power and domination, and less about your sexuality.
Yeah, that's also very true as well.
Yeah.
We could go into further detail, but then we wouldn't be a medieval channel. We'd
Yeah,
be a
right, right.
different topic.
I mean, but and that was that was
Yeah.
that was that was specifically the medieval attitude I was conveying. Not so we're still medieval.
Yeah.
It's still medieval. Put me on top, Philip. Stop
No,
putting me at the bottom.
Rachel wants to, because if when Rachel is on the top one with her outfit and stuff, for some reason it seems to trigger. So that's why Rachel is like, quickly, quickly, quick, 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 get back me top, because the algorithm
Yeah.
actually does buzz. You can see at the site. I don't know if it's on my site or not. The algorithm buzzing again once Rachel's on top. We don't know what the crack is, and here we are talking about top
Yeah,
and bottom.
yeah, right.
What was
Put
it
me on
called?
top,
Yeah. Pro comment section just being like, what? What was it called? So anyway, is there anything else? Because you want to tear back into the outfit again, don't you?
Well, I
Like,
mean, what Edward II is wearing is complete fantasy. There is
mm,
nothing there that is even it's fantasy. It's
yeah,
the fabric style. That style of damask is 15th century. That
mm,
is not the style of damask that was available at all. It wasn't not even just popular. It wasn't available. That isn't the kind of fabrics that were being woven in the 13th or 14th centuries. So
mm,
it's complete fantasy. It would look great in Game of Thrones. It would look great in Lord of the Rings. it is not, it does not belong here. I mean, I'm happy that it's colorful, at least. It's like red and gold, so yay. But it's also got these frogs down the front. He would just be wearing tunics. He would be wearing really nice tunics. The top tunic likely to be silk. But and it could be what's called a lampas, which is a kind of brocade, but it would be a small pattern brocade on big, lots of repetitions. Yeah, nothing. No, that style of damask. Oh, and those frogs. My God. Yeah, those closures that are on, those aren't even frogs. Those are metal closures. Those metal closures that are across his tunic are 100% 15th century. The closures used by women in Italy to close their garments. In fact, I wish I'd thought about it. I have one, on a replica of one on one of my chope. So yeah, nope. Fantasy. Sorry, everyone. His hair, though, is at least accurate. That hairstyle is stylish. It's styling for, a late 13th century, early 14th century prince. You probably could use some facial hair to be more in line with the aesthetic of this era, but it's okay. Clean shaven is good too.
Happy days. Well, at least we have that anyway. Regardless,
some questions.
Go on.
During medieval times, weren't English kings subject to the Pope's authority? Yes. Yes, they were. Did popes ever condemn them for their desires with favorites? Not to my knowledge. I don't like to say it's never happened. What I will say is I haven't seen evidence of a pope condemning a king because of their favorites. I haven't seen that. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. I just haven't personally found records of that.
It's so strange because even going into, and this is actually bang on to Rachel's one, so you could definitely elaborate on this part. This is the bit that confuses me, because isn't there a situation where one of the popes in the 15th century executes a gay man by sawing him in half, right? And then at the same time you have, oh, am I wrong? So that's just... I
don't know. I haven't heard that. Where did you hear that?
So maybe I'm completely wrong.
I'm not saying you're completely wrong. It's not like I'm not a central intelligence system that has literally all the knowledge of the world.
For the 15th century in Italy, no way! God damn it!
I'm not saying you're wrong. I've never heard that before, so that's interesting. And I'm wondering what the source for that is.
What? You're telling me your field of expertise is just in clothing?
Honestly, sawing someone in half sounds like one of those old martyrdom forms of execution that may or may not have ever actually been done.
Yeah. What was it called? 1 second, because it's one of the popes. You know that pope that had many wives, Pope Alexander. So I'm going to quickly just look this up.
I mean, yeah. So Twitchy Witch makes a good point, and yeah. So the
actually, you're right. It's not real. It's historical.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was like, I'm sure it's real. I read it in a book, and I was like, no, it's historical myth. It's been proven that it didn't. So it's actually just, as you said there, added in later on. There you go. So it's actually, yeah, you're right.
Okay, I would have been fascinated and also horrified.
That's the bit that always confused me, though, because in, Alexander's court, you have the likes of Leonardo, Michelangelo, but aren't they out and out gay? Like, people always said that those were gay men.
Again, out and out gay is the wrong expression.
Is it?
There's the 15th century, those are 15th century artists, right? Yeah, their lifestyles are a little opaque. We're not certain. There is certainly some evidence that they were at least bisexual, but not. There's no chronicle of, well, I stumbled across Leonardo the other day in flagrante with one of his, with another man, right? There's nothing that solid as far as I know to really say that Michelangelo was in fact, or Leonardo was fully. I mean, my suspicion, because they're from Florence, and Florence, even in the 15th century, was known as being a haven for homosexual men.
Okay.
I mean, even in Florence, it was known that way. In Florence, in the 14 teens, opens public brothels with the intention of trying to ungayify a lot of their young men. Like, they literally say, we are opening these brothels because we're hoping that access to affordable companions of a female type will allow these men to come back to the having children side of the spectrum. So even Florence understood that. So, statistically, it's more likely that they were at the very least bisexual, if not homosexual.
Mm,
But I don't think any historian has solidly proven it one way or the other. Yeah.
for sure. Um, right, where's my other point? So yeah, just to make it clear that it's kind of more of a blur rather than the Pope going around and persecuting all these
Yeah,
people. That actually these are later myths because
for
I hear it's
certain,
actually later myth.
the papal court in Rome was generally, in the later Middle Ages especially, not necessarily a seat of strict morality, shall we say.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So there is no persecution of people's sexuality in the 15th century by the looks of
It's
it.
there's
Compared to
there's so there's persecution. There are people who are brought up on charges. I mean, in Florence too,
mm,
it is done. You're brought up on charges. There were
mm,
laws against sodomy, absolutely.
yeah.
It's a question of how often it was enforced. At a certain point, they're like, well, we can't prove it because no one actually saw it. And the problem is
Mm,
that these laws against sodomy often ended up being used as a way to just get back at people, whether or not,
mm,
it was a way you could just kind of sully someone a little bit, um,
mm,
whether or not the charges were ever founded or you were fined or they had evidence. Now, sometimes there was plenty of evidence because certain people were, shall we say, sloppy and did what they wanted to do in public places.
yeah.
And it was, in that case, it was more an issue of doing what they wanted to do in public places rather than doing it in the privacy of a private space, right? It was more
Mm.
about public order and less about the morality. So yeah, no, there were laws against sodomy in the 15th century. Now, were those laws against sodomy as prevalent in the 14th century? Were they as prevalent as the 13th century? I haven't looked as deeply into laws in, say, England and France at that time to see if they had sodomy laws on the books. Most places tended to. It's a question of how often it was enforced. It's sort of like the laws, the way when I read through it, it feels more like laws against expectoration. Like,
Mm,
either actually, my hometown has a statute against spitting on the sidewalk,
mm,
right? But how often is that enforced, right? It's there, but are people just getting arrested and fined all over the place for expectorating on the sidewalk? No.
mm.
Yeah.
I do understand what the comment section are saying, though. Like, because we're getting to a point now where should there be marriage inside of the church? What point is it that they stop members of the church from marrying, and that they've taken on an oath of not having sexual intercourse, of being
The
celibate?
12th century is when that
12th century.
starts,
Okay.
and it's as much a problem of sinecures, right? The problem is it's not so much that these priests aren't able to focus on their priestly work. That's
Mm,
given as one of the reasons, but the real problem is
uh,
that they're having sons, and they're like,
mm,
their sons are inheriting their their church position and their
mm,
church power, and that's creating an issue, right?
mm,
The power within the church is becoming is becoming heritable,
yeah.
and that is starting to create some real struggles and dynastic struggles in a place where the Pope feels this is maybe not good for the church. There is
Mm,
also a concern that having a wife and children means that you can't focus on your spiritual duties
yeah.
as well, and
Which,
that
yeah.
continues to be debated to this day, right?
Yeah.
There's lots of churches where priests can marry and have
Mhm,
children, or the
yeah.
whatever the leader of the congregation is, and they
Mm,
do.
mm.
So
Just to be clear, we still have accounts of, even when after the 12th century, we still have accounts of priests, letters, so on and so forth, of priests having, jumping into bed with women, going to brothels.
oh yes.
So, although technically speaking, by law, after the 12th century, they're not supposed to. We
Yeah,
kind of still have that going on, and as we were saying there with Pope Alexandria, so Pope Alexander, the sixth, isn't the sixth, isn't it? The one that
yeah,
has
I think it's
like,
Alexander the Sixth.
yeah, who has 9 kids, wasn't it?
Yeah, he had so many children. My
Yeah.
God, that man! Wow, whew, his poor
Mm.
lovers. Um,
Yeah, so it's still, and sure, the Bulgars were pushing as well for her inheritance and all kind of stuff. So he still from that perspective, didn't prevent it. Just to make it clear that, the marriage thing, basically when we say overall homosexuality, sex outside of marriage, it's still happening. Although
Yeah.
there's laws meant to be preventing it, it's not the Victorian clean cut that were being sold from the Victorians. In fact, in the medieval period, there seems to be laws there, but it seems to be everyone's ignoring them, from my interpretation.
Yeah, it's so there's, I mean, the Boccaccio's Decameron is filled with tales of monks and priests getting it on,
Mm,
right? And abbots, everyone across all the hierarchy of the church, right? It's full of tales of sexual exploitation and sexual exploits
mm,
from members of the church, and that's in the middle of the 14th century is when he compiles all of those stories. And I'm confident that Giovanni Boccaccio didn't write them himself. He took folk tales that had been around for probably a little while
mm,
and set them down and added his own authorship characteristics to it. But the basic stories, I'm pretty certain he didn't invent. So all of these tales of monks and priests and abbots and bishops and canons and prelates engaging in all manner of extracurricular activities with women,
mm.
that none of those were new at the time. So yeah, just because you're not supposed to get married and just because you're supposed to take a vow of chastity doesn't mean that you don't avoid either of those things necessarily. And yeah, we have, even in the 15th century, there are records of popes having more morganatic marriages where that technically aren't legal, but they're basically living like husband and wife sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that as well, and it was a subject that Kingdom Come Deliverance did bring back. That you had a priest in a village, and he had his, the cleaner. But the cleaner, she was sleeping in bed with the priest. Like in that video game, if you go up
Yeah.
to the priest at a certain time, there she is, just plonked in the priest's bed. And sometimes, she's not fully dressed in that bed. If you sneak in there at nighttime while she's not paying attention. So the game really applies that. People are
Yeah.
still having, living like man and wife, although technically speaking, they're not married in the church. So just to make it clear, just like homosexuality, it seems to be sex is not clean cut at all during the medieval period.
Yeah, it is, it's unfortunately it's never as it's humans are humans, right? And so we can pass laws and strictures and regulations against certain behavior, but unless you rigorously enforce those restrictions and those stipulations, people are going to continue to act the way they want to act.
Oh, for
So
sure.
yeah.
Then we go on to this question as well. I can actually read it better if I put you in full screen. How serious was the crime of blasphemy, or did it just depend on the time and place? I think that's very fitting into what we're saying right now.
Oh yeah, that's so it depended on the. So okay, I want to be clear. There's a difference between blasphemy and heresy.
Mm,
Right? Blaspheming is something you do kind of in the moment,
okay.
right? Heresy, it's like saying, well, Jesus Christ, that's blasphemy.
Mm,
Heresy is a belief system that is counter to and or antithetical to the reigning institution. That
mm,
is heresy. So heresy was taken very seriously if it achieved any kind of movement, right? So if just one lone woman spouting off about, or lone man, lone person, man or woman, doesn't matter. One lone person spouting off about how they believe the church should be run and how it isn't, it's not so concerning.
mm,
One man or woman who develops a following that then schisms off and starts their own church or own community, that's concerning. So
mm.
heresy was taken very seriously. We had crusades against heresy. People don't realize the Albigensian Crusade was
Mm,
a crusade against the Cathars in France in the 13th century.
mm, mm,
That's
mm.
Carcassonne, by the way. That was the center, the capital, basically, of the Cathar movement.
Yeah.
And yeah, they actually formed their own community, and the Pope literally called a crusade against them. It was
Mm.
successful, by the way, which is why most of you haven't heard of the Albigensian Crusade or the Cathars.
Yeah, as what was it called? Historians would say it's the winners that write history, not the losers.
Yep.
Mm,
So yeah, heresy was generally taken very seriously if it gained any kind of following. If it's just a lone person, yeah, not necessarily worth time and effort, right? Like the
mm,
Pope the Pope and the church leaders can't spend every day policing people's thoughts. It's very hard to do in the Middle Ages. It's easier to police people's thoughts now, actually,
Mm,
than it was back then, because people literally vomit their thoughts into social media for the whole world to see.
mm,
And, thoughts didn't necessarily have that immediate kind of reach.
mm.
In the Middle Ages, they couldn't, they didn't have the internet. So it took
Yeah.
longer for those thoughts to actually come to the attention of people who might be concerned about them, first off. And second off, heresy, the severity of whether heresy was considered worth pursuing or not, depended on the size of the movement that was forming around it.
Mm, mm, mm. It's like most things, it depends on the resources and what's going on politically as well,
Yeah.
because a lot of people give out as well about the rise. Because even on top of that, a good example of the people not coming together to push it away is the rise of the Ottoman Empire. Like the Ottoman Empire was turning into, what was it, at one point into Vienna against Austria, and
It's
still the
early
Roman.
16th century, Suleiman the Magnificent, yo baby.
Oh, aye. But because politically, and also on top of that, for many Christians, it still wasn't concerning. So it really depends what's happening. And you could say that about
Yeah.
Ireland as well. Ireland was just a funny, funny place because people couldn't make up their mind. Even Irish people couldn't make up their mind if there were, as future historians would call them, insular Christianity, as in they wanted to do their own thing and have their own interpretation of the Bible, or if they were Roman Christian and exactly what the Pope said was exactly what we should do. Now,
Right.
the problem is that, the Irish were right. The Irish had better in what was it called, the 10th, 11th, and 12th century. The Irish kind of did have better Latin than the papacy. They understood the world was round, where certain people from the German side of things actually thought the world was flat. And, the Irish actually had to write letters to the papacy to say, as the Romans before you had pointed out, the world is round. What was it called? And they just to be clear for anyone who believes the world is flat, the Irish proved the world is round because if you watch a boat dips, okay? And the second way the Irish knew the world was round was because of shadows. If you're As the sun is going around, the shadow is cast differently in Ireland in Clonmacnoise than it is in Egypt, and because it's the sun and the shadow moves differently, it proves the world is round. So not only does it dip when a boat goes down, as the Irish had witnessed in the west of Ireland. But also on top of that as well, because of the movement of the sun going around, it causes the shadow to move differently. Okay, so proves the world is round, as they had written to the papacy to tell the papacy that the world is round and not flat. And also on top of that as well, another thing that really annoyed the Irish was the date of Easter. The Irish had calculated exactly the correct date for Easter, and the papacy was like, no. So I understand why the Irish were just like, do you know what?
Yeah, so Kevin makes a comment. The Cathars had it coming for real, for real. Yeah, they did. They really did.
Why did
You know
they?
what? They had a lot of chance, and the Cathars actually had chances. They were given. So here's the interesting thing about heresy in the medieval church. People assume, modern people,
Mm,
especially the way history books are written, to be very anti-church.
mm,
They assume that, oh, well, you commit heresy and then you're burnt at the stake. No, you are
yeah,
given so many opportunities to
unless you're Joan
recant.
of Arc.
The church wants you to recant. They
Mm,
want and it's not just self-interested, right? The medieval church really, at a certain level, believed their own propaganda about the soul, and
mm,
that believing this heresy would endanger your soul and send you to hell. And there
mm,
were really good faith leaders in the church who really believed that. And
mm,
so they really did want you to recant so that your soul would go to heaven and not to hell.
mm,
But also on a practical political level, you recanting your heretical beliefs will help quash the movement,
mm,
right? So they definitely wanted leaders of these heresies, these heretical movements, to recant and to go back to becoming productive members of the Christian community, right?
mm.
So yeah, the Cathars, they were given many opportunities to recant. They really were. They even after during the siege, they were given opportunities even then to recant what they had, but had the way they've been living, the things they've been teaching, the things they've been writing about and saying, and they
Mm.
refused.
Yeah.
So, well,
Burn them all, heretics. It's not like the poor Irish who were just like, but the world is round.
Tea with Tash, round earthers.
uh,
Nice.
what was I going to waffle on about? Oh, yes, that brings us up to the next part of the movie. We have to talk about Braveheart, believe it or not. These topics in Braveheart have us talking for ages, and I knew this is why I knew there was going to be a part three, because some of these topics they just go on and on and on.
Yeah.
The next part, okay, so we finished talking about it was the Battle of Stirling Bridge. We finished talking about the what was it called? Was it legally okay for Scotland to go to war with England, and vice versa? Was it okay for England to legally go to war with Scotland?
Well, illegal, that's legal. It's like under whose law,
Yeah,
right? Which law system are we talking about? There was no Geneva Convention.
yeah, that's why. So,
There
but
was no European Court of Justice or
yeah.
international court.
Hmm.
So by whose law, right? Whose
Well,
system of law?
I think the closest one, because there was punishment there, was the papacy. They all seem to be looking slightly at the papacy, but the
Right.
papacy isn't getting back to them quick enough. And then I think even the Pope is confused to what's going on. Like, what's going on? Who's at war with who? Who's not listening to whose homage? And because the interpretation is the fact that you have what was it called, Edward. What seems to be the pushing now. The problem is as well is that William Wallace is pushing ahead with a blood feud. People are jumping on top of William Wallace's blood feud. You have the early fighting, right, which is quelled and crushed, but then suddenly you have William Wallace who is pushing a blood feud against the local sheriff that turns into a full blown. He's a rebel at this point. That turns into a full blown battle, which is the Battle of Stone Bridge. And then these nobles are jumping onto it to justify it so they can jump on as well. And that's what this whole, argument and debate is. Are we doing what's legal? Because, and the key thing is, at the same time, Edward the First has technically speaking, broken his homage with the King of France, because the
Yeah.
King of France has written to him and told him, you need to come to France to give me your homage and then explain to me why there are English pirates attacking French traders. You need to explain that to me. What's going on? Now, the explanation, what was it? Edward the First had no problems explaining the situation. It is the homage part, and the King of France knows it. This becomes a massive argument, not around the pirates, but around the homage. He
I mean, so
needs.
the homage situation was always going to be problematic from the
Mm,
moment William the Conqueror won the Battle of Hastings, right? Like it was the second you've got the Duke of Normandy is the King of England, it's a mess, right?
mm,
Um, so that homage situation had kind of like there were periods in the intervening 200 years when homage was kind of just left, like
mm,
the English king didn't go and pay homage and the French king just kind of let it go,
mm.
right? So it's not something that's been strictly enforced
Yeah.
necessarily. And so I can see how Edward the First would say, nah, nah, we're equals. We're no longer, it's no longer a question of England being this little backwater kingdom. We are equal to you, because France in this era is not that big.
Mm,
People look at the map
yeah.
of France now and they think, well, that's the map of France as always was, and it is so not.
Mm,
France is basically the Ile-de-France, what is now the Ile-de-France, which is like the Paris province, right?
mm,
So the Paris département. So it was not really that big. They had a lot of duchies and counties that were in homage to them, but those duchies and counties didn't consider themselves part of France either.
mm.
So yeah, France is trying to make sure that England understands it's the big dog, and meanwhile England is saying, but are you the
Mm,
big dog?
yeah. But this conversation is really, really important, because at this time now, both the Scottish and, well, at this point now, and it explains it now just at the next part. So, in the next part, while all this is going on and people are legally trying to find out, is this war legal or not? William Wallace, both historically and in the movie, raises a raid force, and well, it's a big, massive military force. They were supposed to siege, and he goes down to the north of England. Now, this is where it gets historically off, right? In the movie, he goes down to York Castle, which what was it, when they were making the movie, it's actually Trim Castle. What you're looking up here is actually Trim Castle that was completely done up. So if you're ever wondering what happened to all the money in Braveheart, the movie, it actually went into Trim Castle. Mel Gibson used all the money to actually rebuild, what was it, turn Trim, because what happened at the time is that Mel Gibson and the future president of Ireland, Mickey D. Higgins, had a little private conversation. And in that conversation, Mickey D. Higgins actually gave Mel Gibson the castle itself, because it was trading hands between the British government and the Irish government. So between the jigs and reels, Mel Gibson ends up with the castle, and he uses the budget from Hollywood has just come in, and Mel Gibson is just like, chuck the budget at rebuilding the castle. Just, we'll go off, we'll rebuild the inside of it, we'll rebuild the outside of it. And I remember being a kid and all this going on. I don't know if Mihal remembers this as well, but gee, like this was that I remember being a kid and just thinking to myself, "Oh my god, this is absolutely amazing." My what was it called? Friends and some people in living history and everything. During the siege itself, they were on the walls of the castle. And then my what was it? My cousin is one of the cavalrymen just behind William Wallace. So in this scene, just behind him, he's one of the horsemen just behind William Wallace. So I had tons of friends and family that were in this whole scene here, and just having not just the outside of the castle all done up, but also the inside of the castle as well all done up was absolutely just amazing at the time that everything was done up. So like to me, they should have spent more time filming around the castle and stuff, because having it all done up was absolutely amazing. Like not just the outside of it, but the inside of it as well. Because later on, when they do the execution of William Wallace, they also film around the inside of the castle as well. So this is both used for York and also London as well, which is funny, but at the same time, to me, as a little, I was only what, Mihal, we were like 5 or 4 years of age at the time when this was all going on. And I just thought, wow, this was so magical, to have all these people running around the place. Now, granted, running around in kilts and stuff was a bit mental, but, I was none the wiser when I was 4 years of age.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw this movie, I guess I must be 10 years older than you are. I saw this
Mm,
movie when I was 14,
yeah.
maybe 14. Yeah, I think 14.
Mm,
And, you know, like everyone else at the time, I thought, wow, look at this fantastically realistic depiction of medieval Scotland and medieval
yeah.
Scottish clothing and medieval English clothing, right? And so, like everyone else, I started making clothing based on what I was seeing in this
Mm,
movie. And I think one of the reasons I resent this movie so much is because as a 14-year-old, I didn't have the knowledge of primary source research to be able to even learn that it was wrong.
mm.
Because the resources that were available in the 90s for medieval clothing were pathetic
Mm,
and mostly unavailable to someone living in rural Delaware, United States. So
mm.
in certain ways, I resent this movie for deceiving me.
Yeah, I understand that feeling, all right, of being deceived. It was grand for me because I had a lot of people telling me, actually, it should be A, B, and C. So I wasn't too bad. And I still fell in love with the magic because, like, I was, what, 4 or 5 years of age, and most of my family and friends were in this movie. So I had the full magic of it all. But if you're not of that connection, yeah, the sudden portrayal, I fully understand that as well. Like that, it's all blasphemy, it's all wrong. Especially since this is meant to be Trim Castle, and then it gets it's been used for both London Castle, which isn't how it actually is, and also York, and also finding out that the siege of York never even happened as well. That in fact, what was it? William Wallace never successfully sieged any of the castles in the north. He went out and sieged 3 castles, and in every single one of those sieges, he failed to capture the castle, but what was it called? The campaign overall was actually a huge success because he ended up destroying the villages
Yeah.
and killing a whole load of peasants that were meant to feed all these militaries. His scorched earth was a huge success as well because marching military forces up there would be more difficult because most of the earth now is scorched. And he was able to pay not just his own military, but the military forces of the Bruces. Basically, the entire Scottish military was now paid for because of all the loot he had taken and brought back to England. So, although every single one of those sieges was a failure, overall, the campaign was seen as a massive success for William Wallace.
Yeah, I mean, people forget that the expression "the spoils of war"
Mm,
is exists for a reason, because armies didn't used to actually get much in the way of regular salaries in the Middle
mm,
Ages. Roman armies did. Roman armies operated on a dual system of salary plus spoils. But most medieval armies, they didn't really get necessarily regular wages. They got to paid when they despoiled the villages and the towns and the
mm,
countryside of resources.
mm,
So yeah, it's and I think people underestimate the destructive force of just killing the peasants,
mm,
right? Everyone thinks peasant equals peon equals pawn. No, no, no.
mm,
Peasants are the farmers. They're the ones who understand the science and technology of making food,
mm,
of creating food. If you kill your peasants, no one will be around to grow next year's crops. You can't,
mm,
these knights don't know, in many cases, don't know jack squat about growing wheat or growing peas or taking care of animals. So if you kill the peasants, you're actually setting that area up for a really sad situation over the next couple of years, right?
mm. Very, very true.
It was very
Um,
destructive. It was long-term destructive.
mm. Just quickly scanning out through the comments there.
Land
Right.
pirates. Jim's comment, land pirates. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
basically.
pretty much what they were for sure.
Basically, yeah.
So while all this is going on and William Wallace is raiding around the place, at the same time, Edward the First, he's in the middle of raising his military force. He figures Edward the First's plan is, while they are trying to decide if this is legal or not legal, Edward the First is taking no chances because he knows the French are doing the same thing as well. The French and the Scottish are trying to work together to put together a legal case to send over to the Pope. So Edward the First is just like, right, I need to, as quick as I can, raise a big, massive military force and march right up to Scotland and then attack the Scots from there, which goes into our conversation for next week, which is the Battle of Quilkirk. So that's what leads to the huge battle and the huge clash between William Wallace and what was it called? Edward the First, which we'll talk about next week. Okay. But between the jigs and the reels, while this is all going on, you have the Scottish nobles who are still debating and arguing: is this legal or not
Philip, put
legal?
me on top.
There we go.
Algorithm.
Actually, oh, if it, what was it called? Just quickly, so we have about 10 minutes left. So why weren't
Let's see what we've got here in the chat. Why wasn't Stirling Bridge battle portrayed in Braveheart? It would have been an amazing scene. Well, I mean, you mean why wasn't the bridge part of Stirling Bridge portrayed?
There it is for anyone who doesn't know. There
Yeah,
we
it's
go.
honestly, it probably came down to a question of where they were actually filming, what they actually had access to for filming, and the budget they had. I'm going to assume. And honestly, that's the same thing, same reason that they don't depict accurate clothing. The director has a vision, right?
Yeah.
The director has a vision. And that vision is what they're going to make come true. It doesn't matter what actually happened or how it actually looked.
To be honest with you, I have forever since I was 5 years of age, I've been wondering the same thing as well, because I remember it was my dad. I was with my dad at the time, and my dad was just like, okay, we watched a movie together, and I remember watching the Battle of Stirling Bridge for the first time, and it was just the gore level. My brain was just like, oh my God, this is brilliant. But my dad at the same time was just like, where's the bridge? Like, my dad, I just remember my dad, we're in the sitting room. This is back in 1995. And he's just in the sitting room, his arms crossed, and he was like, where's the bridge? Like, and he was looking at me going, yeah, this is brilliant and everything, but like, where's the bridge? Isn't this the Battle of Stirling Bridge? I don't remember, like, my dad's not a historian. He was in the military at the time. He was in the Irish Army. And I remember he went up to a historian afterwards, and he was just like, but there was a bridge at that battle, wasn't there? There was a bridge. And I remember the historian fully explaining to my dad And he was a tour guide historian. And I remember he was explaining to my dad, yeah, there was a bridge. This is, A, B, and C happened. And my dad just agreed the whole time. Yeah, this is what I thought. This is what I thought. There was no bloody bridge. Like my dad was so fixated on the bridge. Meanwhile, my brain was still just like, oh my God, that violence is brilliant. There was no, when I was 5 and, what was it, 7 and so on and so forth, there was no clicking to there being no bridge in the battle. I just thought it was absolutely brilliant. And I suppose that's why I still have that view today where, yeah, there's no bridge, but it was amazing, wasn't it? It was good music, like.
I mean, it's an emotional attachment. I totally
Mm,
get that.
yeah.
And I think if I hadn't felt so betrayed by everything about the movie not being historical, I would feel differently.
Mm.
But generally now I just feel a sense of betrayal when I watch the movie, so it just makes me angry.
Mm. Edward the First was fighting on two fronts against the French and Scotland, and also took for England, France, and won the battle against Scotland. He was very switched on. It was a really good idea for him to quickly send his military force down to Flanders. Now, his plan was to stay in Flanders, but then Scotland suddenly decided. No, it wasn't called the Scottish War of Independence at the time, but Scotland decided they were going to legally, which gave Edward the First some breathing space, declare war on England so they wouldn't get excommunicated. They got excommunicated anyway. Regardless, Edward the First then moved his main military force away from Flanders and up to Scotland. But Flanders still was able to hold out. And the reason for it is because they're in the way the land is in Flanders is it gives the French cavalry a disadvantage against, Flanders and English pikemen and spearmen. That's why you see the reappearance of pikemen in Flanders. The same thing is happening in Scotland at the same time, with the pike formation popping up in Scotland as well. So pike formations are popping up both in Flanders and in Scotland at this point, both in the lowlands and in Flanders. Edward the First is switched on to pike warfare. Because in the movies we're seeing just the Scottish using pike formation, we think the Scottish are the masters of pike formation. It's not. Going up to this next battle, and we'll talk about it next week, Edward the First is already fully switched on to both the usage and the advantages of spear formations and pike formations. And going into this battle, he already knows how to counter pike formations, and that's very important for next week. Bum, bum, bum.
Don't worry, Rachel, we're going to make the greatest Irish movie of all time. Here's hoping.
I seen you, Kevin, because we only have 10 minutes left, so I won't go into the next part of the movie, part 3. So we should be able to finish off the movie after Christmas, because I'm over in next week. I'm over in Japan. I'm on mainland Japan next week for New Year's, so I won't be able to do the live stream next week. But I can do it the week after. What was it? Yeah, the week after. We can do part 3.
I will be live streaming all next week, just like usual. I don't have holidays. I don't have vacations. That's not a thing for me. So,
what is holiday? My life is holiday. Pilgrimage? Is pilgrimage holiday?
yeah, pilgrimage is a holiday. It's a kind of holiday. It's a holy day. It's a holy time, right? Question. Oh, this does I guess does what's happened in the chat? Does the chat have to do something with the algorithm? We think so. We think if the live chat is, we think if the live chat is lively, we think it does drive the algorithm. We'll be honest, the almighty algorithm is a bit mysterious, kind of like God, actually. So we think we understand it, and then it does something to tell us we don't. So
like right now, right? So what's going on right now is what was it called? It's literally on the tip. So it's on for us. It's around 30, 40 viewership right now. If that's any time that could suddenly burst and start hitting 100,000 views all at once, which it has done. So once it gets up to around 30, 20 views, which it is on right now, that's the point where it could burst up to like 100,000. It just gets crazy after that point. But how to burst? Like I know how to get it on the edge of bursting. But popping is just, I have no clue how it pops and then breaks into the hundreds, thousands. And then you have a live stream where you're hitting the 20K. Like Rachel's hit the 20K a few times. Like, do you know how that bloody pops?
No, and it's like I'm doing exactly the same things. I have literally, at the peak about a month ago, I was getting 400 concurrent viewers, which is, for those who don't know, that's a lot. 400 concurrent viewers for our channels is a lot. So I don't know. It feels like the algorithm is either punishing me for having abandoned it for a little while I traveled, or Christmas is having an effect on how many people are watching or what they're watching. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't get notifications. Yeah, it turns off notifications and everything. I don't know
Oh,
what's going
yeah. So
on the
every
YouTube
time
side of things.
YouTube updates, everyone, for those of you on
Mm,
YouTube, when YouTube updates its app, it resets, it can reset your notification settings for all of the people you follow. So if
mm,
you really care about being notified when creators like just saying the Creative Contessa and Irish Medieval History go live,
mm,
then you need to go and double check your bell. Click on the bell and make sure that
mm,
all is ticked. If all notifications is not ticked, it will only let you know when it thinks there's something you want to watch.
mm.
Yeah,
For sure. And that's the same thing. Like, definitely like and comment and all that stuff does help the
it does.
algorithm, and it helps us get up to that edge point. But breaking that edge point into hitting the 10,000, the 1,000, ooh, I don't know. And it's strange because we do way more work than a lot of other YouTubers and stuff. And there's other YouTubers, even like ones that are just barely getting by, popping that bubble. So it's like, I don't know. Myself and Rachel are just in a it's literally just we know how to get it up to standard, but the pop to get it up to the 10 was it getting 10,000 viewers, 1,000 viewers. eh, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
Cheers,
didn't get
thanks.
notified. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
there it is.
Uh,
I get notifications, but it gets buried under notifications that just bombard me. Yeah, I guess that's the other thing, right? You have to decide which notifications actually matter to you. And yeah, right now I set an alarm.
the
Yeah,
thing
YouTube
is,
needs a mud hole stomped in its back. Yeah, Jim, you're not wrong.
oh,
You are you are not wrong.
the thing
Well, we
is, caveman. Oh, you're gone.
are we going to, so wait, next week? That means next week we're not, you and I will not be doing any streaming next week
Yes.
because you'll be on the big island.
Oh
They
yeah,
call it
the big
mainland
island.
Japan.
That's what everyone calls it. They call it here in Okinawa because I'm on one of the small islands. I'm over in Okinawa, and they call mainland Japan. So, all right. Just I'll finish off Caveman's one, and then we'll start to wrap it up because we have 4 minutes left. So I don't mind answering a few questions and.
Yeah.
What was it called? Then finish up. The English longbow rips pike formations apart. Edward III made it into law that all boys over 12 had to train in the bow every Sunday. There was already counters for the longbow because the longbow wasn't a new invention. They had longbow during the early medieval period, and
Yeah.
so the Irish and the Scots at this point already had counters for the longbow. The problem is with the battle we'll cover next week is that the nobles leave, so the longbowmen come in, they fire off their arrows, but then the Scottish law, and we'll talk about the various conspiracy theories because the movie talks about the conspiracy theories. So if you're going to do your research for was it in 2 weeks, look up the conspiracy theories around the next battle. But there's an entire conspiracy theory to why the cavalry leaves. If the cavalry had stayed on the battlefield, William Wallace could have won that battle. The Scottish and the Irish were already countering the longbow and archers by using hobblers and their own cavalry to just go around and smash into longbow and what was it called, archer lines. So those counters were already in place. And then during the 100 Years' War, again, the English would go and counter that again by the usage of, as Rachel would easily explain, pole arms and stuff. So those counters were coming in and advancing as well. But there was already encounters in place by the Scottish, and that's why it goes into the whole conspiracy theories of why did the cavalry leave. Okay, so we'll talk about that in the next 2 weeks. But just to make you guys aware, in both Ireland and Scotland, already counters there with the hobblers, and on top of that, in the Battle of Stirling Bridge down below, it was once they start to cross through, what was it? William Wallace deploys the hobblers to continue chasing them way out of Scotland, and not just chase them. There are other English groups being attacked and harassed as well to push them out of Scotland. But as myself and Rachel, it's very haphazard. Like who is English and who is Scottish? So although you've got sources that turn around and say, those hobbler horsemen were chasing other English groups. What English groups? Who was loyal to Edward? Who was loyal to troubles. It's very up to the air when it comes down to the Battle of Stirling Bridge, and that's why the Scottish are always also trying to work out. Is this war that William Wallace has basically pulled us back into? Is it legal? Is
So,
everything going on? Go on.
there's a question here. The Irish fellows who were in Edward the First army when it first invaded Scotland, where were they from?
Oh, so I don't know. People have been looking into this one as well, the levies that Edward the First has, and in the movie itself, it's never explained. And then on top of that as well, people who have done research into it haven't found levies in Edward the First's military. However, this slightly confuses the Gaelic. You do have letters and you do have Gaelic going over. So the Gaelic in Leinster, which is in the southeast of the part of the island, are a part of the Lordship of Ireland. And as part of the Lordship of Ireland, you do have levies going over and fighting with the English, but they're not levies. This is also the point that's also very
Mm.
important. The Lordship of Ireland is not ran like. So when England is asking for quote unquote levies, what they send over is Irish war bands, which is kerns and uglucks. Kerns and uglucks, cattle raiders basically, are sent over to take the place of levies. So the Lordship of Ireland, they really do try to run the Lordship of Ireland like England. It just doesn't work because, quote unquote, Ireland is a clan system or a king group system. And by this point, massively by this point, the likes of, what's it called? The Bergs, the Cogans, the Fitzstevens, the Fitzgeralds, the Butlers, they're all now married into they're married into Gaelic families. They have hostages amongst each other, and they've also adopted children amongst each other as well to keep the peace. Okay, to stop each other raiding, attacking. You have okay, we'll stop attacking you if you give us your child, or you adopt my son, or I marry your. And this happens from the get go. Like straight away, Hugh de Lacy, when he's building Trim Castle to stop the O'Connors from attacking him, he marries Rosie O'Connor against the King of England. The King of England is like, no, you cannot marry Rosie. He does it anyway. He wants to keep the peace. He's keeping the peace, and he tells, what was it called, the likes of King John and stuff to just get lost. I don't care. And the thing is, Hugh de Lacy has Trim Castle, which is one of the most powerful castles in Western Europe at the time, which is this castle, which is in the movie. This is Trim Castle, and this was built in 1220. Do I have? Well, that's the outside walls of it. I don't have the keep itself. It's terrifying as well. You have to keep in mind this was built. You can see the keep actually in the background there. This was built in 1220. This was absolutely terrifying at the time. So the chances of Henry II, as called King John, of invading in and taking this off Hugh de Lacy Senior was very restricting. So they couldn't do anything. When Hugh de Lacy went off and married Rosie O'Connor, they really couldn't do anything. So in the Lordship of Ireland, it's slightly ran differently. So when you're saying levies, they're basically, you have these Anglo-Irish sending over Irish war bands to kind of keep people happy over in England. Okay, now most likely they probably came out of Leinster, which was under the Lordship of Ireland at the time. Also, which is very confusing for the Gaelic, weirdly enough, you have the likes of Henry III and Edward I writing letters to the O'Connors and the O'Neills asking for levies, as you're putting it there as well, to fill the English military, which is confusing to the O'Connors and the O'Neills because the O'Connors and the O'Neills up to this point are at war with the English. So when they get these letters, they're just like, what the hell? And it's meant to be all in good faith. Like, oh yeah, I know there was a slight, what was it called? Complication there, but you're still under my protection, aren't you? This is
Wow.
where the O'Neills want to make it. They start writing letters off to the Pope. We'll talk about it next week and the week after and stuff. They do actually start writing letters to the Pope to make it clear, hey, look, the English are attacking us, right? We do respect that we're under the Lordship of Ireland, but they're very abusive towards us. So we are now legally attacking the English because they're very abusive to us. And we also want the Scottish to take over the protection of Ireland. Okay. So the reason why it's a Lordship of Ireland recognised the papacy is because England is meant to protect Ireland and also allow them to choose their own king, which they failed to do it. Or, completely failed to do it. They don't respect. It was it Brian O'Neill was killed going up against the English. They don't respect anything to do with the Irish. So the Irish then start writing letters during the Scottish War of Independence. The Irish start writing letters over. We don't know if there was any letters sent back to recognize, say, look, you've got the green light. You can now go to war with the English. We don't have any surviving letters that I'm aware of. But regardless, the Irish then, in battles like the Battle of Dysart Dee, various sieges that happen in Ireland, in none of them, the Irish are excommunicated. They're not excommunicated compared to the Scottish. So it's granted that maybe the Pope had given, these invasions and attacks the thumbs up. Okay.
Yeah, so there's an interesting question here. Maybe we'll close with this because we are about out of time, or out of time technically. Is there a medieval king who surpassed Alfred the Great? Wow. Yeah, Sejong the Great in Korea definitely surpassed Alfred the Great. So I guess it depends on what do you Alfred the Great was great in his time, right? Because of what he managed to accomplish in his era, given his circumstances.
So Flange Shinna was 1,000 times better. Alfred the Great found it difficult to get out of his own realm. He just won a battle against the Mercians, which was under Viking occupation at the time, quote unquote. He never pushed up to Northumbria. Compared to the Irish king at the time, which was Flange Shinna, who was recognised as King of Ireland at the time. So at the very same time, you have Flange Shinna, who manages to get the cattle tribute against the men of Munster, the men of Connacht, his own confederation of the Nael, and also against the Ullid and the men of Dublin as well, the Vikings, right? So he ends up getting cattle tribute against everyone. The only thing he fails
to on top.
The only thing he fails to do is to get centralized kingship. So his next thing was to get centralized kingship. He now wanted to be considered a centralized king, just like Charlemagne. So he was then pushing to become the Charlemagne of Ireland. He failed to do so because when he brought in the new system, everybody was just like, no. We want to keep the quote-unquote clan system, the king group system in there. We also want to have voting coming in. So at the time, it wasn't a thing of my son would take over after me. They actually were taking goes between the Clan Coleman was taking goes with the Clan Owen. So after he was part of the Clan Coleman. So when he died, it would then be the go of the Clan Owens. The Clan Owen would take their go next. So when he said, no, I'm going to believe in kingship, just like the French do, my son, not even Donegal Dunn, my first main son would become king then. Everyone rebelled against him. So he had rebellions kicking off left, right, and centre when he said he was going to bring in the French Charlemagne system into Ireland. That's where he failed. So I would say Flange Shinna was better than, Alfred the Great, to be honest with you.
I mean, Alfred the Great created stability and a wider spread stability than there was before. And he put a lot of really good institutions into place in a time when it was not easy to do that. So, I mean, he definitely accomplished, I would say, great things. I'm not talking about war. I'm talking about at the level of rulership, actually being a good king. He was definitely all of those things. I would say that, and I don't generally look at European rulers in that light. I don't look at any rulers in that light. So I actually even thought about, well, who would I think would be, get a good rulership award, for instance. Philip the Good, I think, of Burgundy. They were the Dukes of Burgundy, but they were the most powerful monarchs in their era, even though they weren't monarchs. And, I think he actually was a very good ruler. He had a long, prosperous reign, and God knows that the cities under his rulership thrived and prospered during his very long tenureship. But I don't generally look at rulers in that light. And medieval rulers don't generally institute the same programs that we might consider good and valuable now, right? They had different concerns, very different concerns on some levels than modern governments have, happily. So yeah, I don't really think I could easily off the top of my head. I could point to rulers who I think have been misjudged by history. Richard III is among them.
Very true. I would agree with that one.
I think Richard III, considering the early legislation he started passing and the way he started ruling, I think England would have been better off under him in the long run than under the Tudors, at least until Elizabeth came along.
Mhm.
But the history, we'll never know.
That's it. That's it. Definitely for sure. Regardless, we'll have to start tidying. Sadly, we'll have
Yeah,
to tidy up now. I can see
yeah.
the comment section trying to
No, I know.
pull
And
me into a
everyone,
deeper
I'm
conversation.
off to a historical Korean painting class workshop where we're actually going to grind our own pigments, make our own
Wow,
paints, and paint
nice.
in a historical Korean fashion. So I need to eat lunch before we do that.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Regardless, guys, I won't. I'm taking next week off. I'm going to try to make shorts when I can and try to get them out there. Tomorrow, myself, for you guys, Christmas Eve will be Christmas for us. We'll do a Christmas special around the same time again, guys. So definitely pop on there for our Christmas special. And then that will be my last live stream. Yeah, that's going to be my last live stream because I'm off to mainland Japan, off to Nagoya to go see a whole load of Japanese armor and the Jesuits and all that kind of stuff with my wife. So I'll try to keep you guys documented as much as possible. Any extra stuff I'll try to shove onto my Patreon. I was meant to do it last time, I never did. But this time I'll try to do it again. And I'll also try to shove membership stuff over to YouTube as well, because there's a whole membership thing that is up and I do have members now. So sign up for my membership over on YouTube as well. Just give me money, will you? Regardless. And also, what else do I need to do? So I'll do the shorts. I'll try to put membership things up left, right, and center. And I'm doing classes. My classes next month is Life in 13th Century Ireland. So Life in 13th Century Ireland is a whole load of classes I'll be doing next month. It's 20 quid a month. So definitely head on over to my Patreon, 20 quid a month, and I'll be covering life in medieval 13th century medieval Ireland under the lordship of Ireland. Was Ireland centralised under the English, or was it still under the clan system? We'll have to find out next month. Regardless, Rachel, what are you up to for the rest of the week?
Yeah,
And
I've got plenty of live streaming, medieval story time, medieval sewing parties. I'll be doing a medieval cooking session this weekend. So if you want to watch me work through an original medieval recipe, redact it and make it live, then feel free to join that. Yeah, I've got my full program of live streaming. I don't get breaks. And I also have patronage. I have patronage through Patreon and I have channel membership on YouTube. And both of those come with access to lots of extras, extra content, extra primary resources. When I discover new things, I share it with my patrons and my channel members. And you get access to my Creative Contessa Discord, where we actually share even more information with each other and lessons learned and our progress on our various projects and our historical endeavors. So if you are able to support me financially, and you would like access to all these perks, please feel free to go check that out. Otherwise, I would like to thank all of you who double tap the screen, who hit the thumbs up, who leave comments, who participate in our live chat, and who help drive these live stream sessions and keep them lively. Because without you, it would just be me and Philip, jabbering at each other, really.
let's still do that anyway. Anyway, other than that, guys, thank you so much for all the support. It means so much to us. And everybody that donated today, geez, thank you so much. I'm going to head over and get myself a coffee now with that 2 quid you gave me earlier. So thank you so much for that. Other than that, guys, thank you so much and Slán go Bye.
Stay creative, guys.